The flower. The structure of a flower. A flower has various parts. The stalk is called the pedicel, and the extended thickened portion at the tip of it that bears the flower is called the thalamus or the receptacle. On that, the flower is arranged in the form of four whorls. The outermost layer is called the calyx, which contains the sepals. Then we have the petals, which form the corolla layer, the whorl. Then you have the androecium, which contains stamens, and the gynoecium, which is right in the middle, which has pistils. The calyx. It's the outermost whorl. It has green leaf-like structures called sepals, and the function is to enclose and protect the bud. The corolla contains petals which surround and protect the reproductive parts of the flower. They're brightly colored just to attract insects for pollination. The androecium is the third whorl, and it's the male reproductive part. It has stamens. The stamen has anther, which has two lobes, with fine particles called pollen, which are the male gametes. And it has a filament, which is a thin, hair-like, long and narrow stalk. The gynoecium is the innermost whorl. It has the female reproductive part, and it's called the carpel. The carpel has an ovary which is swollen right at the bottom. The style, which is the long and narrow extension of the ovary, and the stigma, which is a disc-like part at the top of the style. In a hibiscus, the carpels are joined together. The ovules in the ovary are the female gametes, contain the female gametes. Complete and incomplete flowers. Complete flowers are complete if all four whorls are present. Example in mustard, pea, hibiscus, and sunflower. But they are incomplete if it lacks one or more whorls. Example, mulberry, oak, grass, and begonia. Unisexual and bisexual flowers. Unisexual flowers have either male or female reproductive parts. Example, papaya. Bisexual plants have both male and female reproductive parts in the same flower. Example, rose and hibiscus. The main function of the flower is reproduction, so it produces the seeds and the fruits. This happens by pollination and then fertilization. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same or another flower. There are two types of pollination. Self-pollination happens in the same plant. It could be on the same flower itself, or it could be another flower on the same plant. Cross-pollination is when pollen transfers from anthers of one plant to the flowers of another plant. Agents of pollination include wind, which is in rice and maize. The pollen grains are dry and they are light, and they have to be produced in large amounts to account for some wastage. The style projects out and has large and feathery stigma to catch the pollen in the air. Insects. Insect pollination is seen in rose, marigold, and jasmine. The petals are usually bright to attract insects. Most flowers produce some nectar. Most of the flowers smell really good. Example, jasmine. The pollen grains are large and they are sticky, and they produce in small amounts. The stigma is also sticky and is flat or knob-like to attract the pollen grains. Water. Water pollination is seen in water plants like Hydrilla and Vallisneria. In Vallisneria, the male flower gets detached from the plant on maturity and it floats on the water. The female flower has a long stalk and floats on the water, and when the main flower comes in contact with the female flower, pollination occurs. Animals and birds. Birds and bats come in contact with pollen and they transfer it to other flowers. Therefore, the flowers are bright and they're usually on top of the tall trees. Fertilization is the process of fusion of male and female gametes. The pollen reaches the stigma, and then it grows out a pollen tube which reaches the ovary, and then the male gamete which is present in the pollen tube emerges from there and fuses with the female gamete which is inside the ovule, and a zygote is formed. So what is a zygote? A zygote is the single cell that develops as a result of fusion of the male and female gametes. Then petals, sepals, stamens wither away. and the ovary enlarges and develops into the fruit, and the ovules develop into seeds. The parts of a fruit. A fruit is a ripened ovary. There are fleshy fruits and there are dry fruits. Fleshy fruit has a pericarp and a seed. The pericarp has three parts: epicarp, which is the outer leathery part, the mesocarp, which is the fleshy part, and the endocarp, which is hard and has the seed inside it. Now, in dry fruits, the pericarp is dry and hard, and they are not distinguished into three layers. Example: gram, pea, maize, and bean. Fleshy fruits, the pericarp is nicely developed and flesh and thick. Fleshy and thick. Example: the plum, the apple, tomato, brinjal, orange. The functions of a fruit: it protects the seed inside that's growing, it stores a lot of food, and it attracts the animals to come and eat it and take the seed to a far off place for dispersal of seeds. The seed. This develops from the ovules after fertilization. It has a seed coat and an embryo. The embryo has two parts. It has a cotyledon and it has the embryonal axis. The cotyledons are attached to the embryonal axis and they provide nutrition. The embryonal axis has two parts. The lower part is called the radicle, and that develops into the root system. And the plumule is the upper part, which is a leafy structure and develops into the shoot system. The types of seeds are monocotyledonous seeds, as in rice and wheat, and dicotyledonous seeds, example in tomatoes and peas. The parts of a maize seed seen from outside would be the endosperm, the plumule, the radicle, and here below you have the endosperm seen this way, the plumule, the upper part of the embryonal axis, and the lower part is the radicle. Germination is a process by which the dormant embryo becomes active and it grows into a new plant under favorable conditions. And what are the conditions that are needed? Right air, water, and temperature. First, the seed swells up, the seed coat bursts, then the radicle grows down and develops the root system, the plumule grows upward and develops the shoot system. The types of germination, you have epigeal and hypogeal. Epigeal germination, epi means above, so the cotyledons are pushed above the soil. The cotyledons become green and they form the first leaves. Example in bean, sunflower, cotton, and castor. In a bean seed, what happens is the seed absorbs water and swells, the seed coat bursts, the radicle grows downward. But the hypocotyle elongates and it pushes the cotyledon up above the soil. So the cotyledons become green and they are the first leaves and they perform photosynthesis. The epicotyle emerges from the cotyledons and then that forms the second leaves. Finally, the cotyledons wither away. Now, in hypogeal germination, the cotyledons remain below the soil. The plumule emerges to form the new leaves. So it's mostly seen in monocotyledonous plants like wheat, rice, maize, and some dicot plants as well like mango, gram, and pea. In a maize seed, what happens is the seed absorbs water and swells, the seed coat bursts, the radicle grows downward, the epicotyle elongates and takes the plumule out of the soil to form the first leaves. Cotyledons remain under the soil. Epigeal versus hypogeal germination. The cotyledons. In epigeal germination, they are pushed above the soil, they form the first leaves called seed leaves. In hypogeal germination, they remain below the soil, they provide food for the embryo, and then they shrivel. Plumule. The plumule forms the second leaves in epigeal germination. The plumule forms the first true leaves in hypogeal germination. The occurrence. In dicot plants like beans, you see epigeal germination, but hypogeal will be seen mostly in monocot plants like wheat and rice, but also in some dicot plants like pea and gram.